lectures have been delivered, and today is the 28th. As you already know that Menon will be speaking on history of cotton. Let me just in short introduce her, because by her lecture you will come to know how much deep her research is. She has done her masters in English and French from Mumbai University in 85. Then, though she is currently independent journalist writing for Economic and Political Weekly and on the faculty of Xavier Institute of Communication. She had worked in Hindu, then she had already was working as freelance journalist earlier, and articles have been published in the Hindu Sunday magazine, the Hindu Survey of Environment, Business Line, Indian Express, The Statesman, Humanscape magazine, and other publications. She has already contributed to Interpress Service, Women's Feature Service, and the InfoChange website. Humanscape magazine as managing editor from September to March 96 she had worked on. Her books have been published, which you can see outside by Oxford University Press, will be sold at 20% discount. I am announcing just now. And the first book was A Thread History, The Journey of Cotton in India, about which she is going to tell today. It is co-authored with Uzramma. A contemporary account of cotton has been focused in there. Then reporting Pakistan on my 9th-month stint, she has written, because she was appointed as a special correspondent in Pakistan in Islamabad, and after some months she was expelled and had to come back. She may tell in short what was that in her lecture. Riots and After in Mumbai, that is Chronicles of Truth and Reconciliation, is another book, and she has researched a report on organic cotton, which is a compilation and analysis of cotton in India. So, as this endowment requires, or actually was taken as outstanding woman scholar, and different areas naturally women had not taken so far. She had already earned some fellowships. She was sent by Times of India in the USA at the invitation of the US government to study environment issues. Then the Center for Science and Environment, CAC, New Delhi, she acquired media fellowship in that. In the project involved in that was writing a detailed report on the water situation in Kutch and the efforts of an NGO in regenerating groundwater and helping farmers to become self-reliant. The Rotary Club of Bombay North Fellowship also she has acquired for environmental journalism in 1996. In February 99, fellowship for the Center for Science and Environment, New Delhi. In that, under that type of fellowship, she has studied the watershed management and education guarantee schemes in Madhya Pradesh. I don't think it is necessary to read out all that, and as you all are waiting for her lecture. Let me just in a line or two introduce our today's chairperson, Dr. Usha Thakkar, who is all the time our friend, supporter, as well as being the vice president of the Asiatic Society earlier, and she herself now at Mani Bhavan, she is the director of Mani Bhavan Smarak Granthalaya. She herself is a devoted worker for women's causes, and her special subject is studying Gandhi from different aspects and different views. Her also 2-3 books on Gandhi's, understanding Gandhi and all, she has published, and so I think a better chairperson wouldn't I have got. So we welcome both of you. I just request our honorary secretary to welcome with memento and a small token. We have decided to welcome our guest instead of a bouquet with a book and a bag. So I request Menon to.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to the Asiatic Society for inviting me for this lecture. It's a real privilege and I'm really honored. I love the Asiatic Library. It's one of my favorite, probably the most favorite place in the city. And I've spent a lot of time here and the books here are just fantastic, and I would really like to use this opportunity to also thank the staff who are just wonderful and they've always helped me. And I think it's one of the best libraries I have ever been to. I've been to too many, but this is definitely really good. So it's a real privilege and honor, and I'm so happy to see Mrs. Banerji, you've come all the way for the lecture. And also I want to thank Yogesh, Dr. Meena and Wisby, and of course Usha Ben and the Asiatic Society once again for this lecture. So this is basically, I'm going to talk about cotton in India. I got interested in cotton in 2002 when I was freelancing. There were two friends of mine who worked in NGOs, Ashish Kothari and Satish, who wanted a paper on organic cotton. So I thought it's a good idea to explore that because I knew very little about cotton in India, and it was a good opportunity to travel and study various organic cotton ventures in the country. I don't claim to be, it was comprehensive, but definitely I did travel to a few states in India. I found a lot of farmers growing cotton on their own, and these were not the hybrids, but they were growing desi cotton, and especially in places like Ponduru, which still have near Srikakulam in Andhra Pradesh, which still have the old khadi weaving unit, and at that time they had a turnover of over 1 crore. So it was pretty impressive to visit places like that and see pit looms in each house, people growing hill cotton. It's a tall kind of cotton. I'll show you the photographs later. But there was also something very sad happening there because weaving, as you know, doesn't get much money, and the younger people weren't interested. So there was this talk of going to towns and nearby towns looking for jobs. So I'm going ahead. So that's how my interest in cotton started, and that was also how I met my co-author, Uzrama, who's really the expert on cotton and weaving. She's had a long history of working with artisans as part of Dastkar Andhra, and she's been working on developing this Malka trust. The two pictures that you see are Malka fabrics, they're hand-woven fabrics, they're handloom fabrics called Malka, and they're trying to revive the old linkages between farmers and weavers and develop a kind of weaving that doesn't put the cotton through the intense processes that industrialization demands. So Malka comes every year to the Kalagora festival, so you can buy it there. It's also online, and it's a fabulous way of engaging artisan craft weavers, and they sell their own fabric, lovely designs. They revive the indigo dyeing, resist dyeing, which are all very ancient types of block printing. So that's how I got into cotton, and we decided to do this book which would connect both cotton growing and weaving and look at the historical aspect of how cotton in India has been systematically kind of denigrated. First it was by the British, and then it was by our own policymakers post-independence. So for me, the main issues in cotton history are One is the huge historical importance that cotton had in India since 5,000 years or maybe even earlier. You know, the kind of fabric India made and the kind of trade we had, it was extremely widespread, and the East India Company came to India only for our wonderful fabrics. So that was the beginning of the end, actually. And that journey of cotton, I think, systematically started going on a very perilous path since then. So that's one of the major issues in the history of cotton has been how the English designed their machines. The Industrial Revolution was based on machines which designed for a longer staple length, not for desi cotton, which, as you know, has a very short staple. So the American cotton became the norm. The longer staple American cotton became the norm for designing, was the basis on which Richard Arkwright and the others designed the machines. And our short staple cotton didn't work on them. And then systematically, the British tried to introduce longer staple cotton through various experiments in our country, and they were a failure, obviously. But the seeds for the future research were sown at that time, and post-independence, we developed hybrids. In fact, India was the country to first develop a hybrid, Dr. C.T. Patel in 1970. And from then on, we haven't looked back. I mean, at the time of independence, desi cotton was 97% of the cotton growing area in the country. Today, it's just 3%. The rest is cotton transgenic hybrids, of which there are over 2,000. Question is, why do we need 2,000 transgenic hybrids? No other country in the world has them. So, okay, so all of you know what cotton looks like. This is they don't grow hybrids in Australia, but the cotton looks fatter than ours. Thought you might want to see it. So, when I studied organic cotton, there were a lot of places I went to, and these are the cotton gins, and that the two top pictures, the two below. This is ponduru, the old way of sizing cotton yarn. As you can see, it's tied on wood, and you know it covers a huge length. And many of the processes in ponduru, in fact, all of them are by hand. So I'm sorry, that picture will be straight in the next slide. But you can see women. This is a sight that you see when you just walk around ponduru. It looks like something from a very remote past, but these pictures are taken just 10 or 12 years ago. And you can see, this is a ginning factory. So you can see the unhygienic conditions of, you know, how they're trampling cotton all day in very, very poorly lit rooms. So you can see the lady, her name is also Meena. She's actually here. She's actually removing the seed from the cotton using a wooden implement. So it's a little charming old town, but I'm afraid it's not going to remain that way for a long time. So cotton is basically a dryland crop. You know, it was left to just grow on its own. But today, you have to spend a fortune growing cotton because you're growing it. The cotton that's available today needs a lot of water, it needs a lot of fertilizers. And it's grown, 60% of the cotton is grown on rain-fed lands. And we in Maharashtra, which also has the highest number of farm suicides in Vidarbha, has the lowest net returns of cotton. So you can see the crisis of cotton unfolding just by changing the variety of the cotton that you have grown. Because you forgot a very important fact that 60% of our land doesn't have irrigation, and that's the land where cotton is grown. So just to go back to the past and see the importance of cotton for us. It is the ancient home of Gossypium arboreum, and we are the only country, one of the few countries which probably grows all 4 types of cotton. Hirsutum is American, Herbaceum is again Indian, and Barbadans. So the Dhaka muslin, I mean, people used to wonder and marvel at the fineness of the Dhaka muslin. It came from a short staple cotton, and it was hand woven. No machine has woven the Dhaka muslin. So it was called Abe Rawa, Shabnam, beautiful names for a cotton that unfortunately no longer exists and is no longer woven into so many high counts. So this is a bit funny. I would like to read this story of the vegetable lamb of Tartary. The fact that the British became such powerhouse in growing in textiles is ironic in a country which didn't even grow cotton, didn't know much about it. And this myth about the vegetable lamb of Tartary was that there was actually a plant which had a little lamb at the top which would produce the wool. And this is apparently quite a popular myth in England till the 17th century. There's a curious myth in the Middle Ages in Europe known as the vegetable lamb of Tartary or the Scythian lamb. It was supposed that the fruit or seed pod of this particular tree, which no doubt was a cotton tree, when it burst fully open, disclosed to view within it a little lamb. From the fleeces of this lamb, bound wool, which were of surpassing whiteness, the natives of these countries where these lambs are found wove materials for their garments and headdress. This myth, brought by Sir John Mandeville into England, continued to be believed till the 17th century. This is from a wonderful book by Arno Pierce, who travelled in India long ago, which is available in this very library. So this is the knowledge they had about cotton, whereas we in India, we were growing hundreds of varieties of cotton which were adapted to each locality. I mean, each region sometimes had more than 44 types of cotton. We had colored cotton. We still have pinkish, yellowish cotton growing. In fact, I went to Dharwad some years ago to check out. They were growing all kinds of colored cotton which they were weaving in a lovely captive khadi unit and exporting. And just last month I went to Gopuri, Vinoba Bhave's ashram, which Vasant Phutane and his wife Karuna, who are organic farmers, have revived. They've revived the old machines. It's quite fabulous to see. They're also growing short-stapled cotton and weaving it there. So that was wonderful to see efforts like this. So we come from this country, but Britain, which dominated and used us as a backyard for raw cotton, this is what they thought of cotton at one point. So there is evidence of our India's superiority in textile. Resist dyeing is a very difficult art, and in fact, people are doing it in India now, but this was found in the deserts of Egypt. And it's a resist dyed textile piece. You can see a bandhani. So this establishes that Indian cloth went to Egypt probably even in the 13th century. After that, after the 1600s, things changed a lot for Indian cotton because the East India Company traded in cotton. They set up factories. The first factory was in Surat, and here the specifications of what would have to be made were given to Indian artisans, and they would make it, and it would be exported. But in the 1700s, when in England was on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, all that changed. So I just want to read this bit. India held a preeminent position for its dyed and printed cotton textiles in the past. Once a major article of trade and export, cotton cloths of varying types produced with simple equipment came up against the formidable Industrial Revolution in Britain. From the time the machines were invented to process cotton, a subsistence crop left to grow untended was turned into a commodity. The short and medium staples that thrived in the subcontinent were denigrated, and sweeping changes were introduced from the very seed to cultivating practices, all to match the new technology for processing and weaving. Growing and weaving cotton in India were intricately connected, but the Industrial Revolution, British hegemony, pulverized that link. So I think that's one of the most important things that happened. So as other researchers have said, soon it became hard to imagine that India had clothed the world for so many centuries, and her cotton had been much sought after. Before 1800, India was both the largest grower of cotton and the largest producer of cotton goods in the world. But then the tables turned. So while Indian short staple cotton was ginned, spun and woven by what looked like rude implements to the British, they were ideal for these processes. There is acknowledgement of India's high standard of cotton cloth, despite these so-called shortcomings. So Baines, Edward Baines, who I've quoted a lot in our book, has written this wonderful book called The History of Cotton Manufacture in 1835. He's quite sympathetic to Indian cotton, and he says, all this fell apart in less than a few decades after machines were developed. Within one age, by the aid of machinery, the manufacture has made great progress than it had previously made in many centuries. So he's referring to the downfall of Indian cotton with the Industrial Revolution. What made Britain realize that it can't only rely on America for its supply of cotton? The War of Independence changed a lot of things when cotton supply stopped. So the East India Company decided that they would explore India as a backyard for cotton, since it was growing cotton anyway. But then there was a twist to this, because India was sending abroad not raw cotton, but mostly her finished goods. So the British imposed taxes on her finished goods. After the 1700s, people were not allowed to wear Indian cloth. If they wore it, they would face a penalty. And they made sure that none of our fabrics or our finished goods were sold there. And they decided to improve Indian cotton so that's suitable for their mills. So then you hear about Indian cotton being dirty, not well cleaned, the natives don't take an interest. And that is also largely due to the fact that we stored cotton in kallis, deep pits lined with cow dung, which was of course banned later, as you can see in Surat and other places. But there were a lot of complaints because this was the dirty cotton that was being taken to England. And they didn't like it, they didn't like the staple length, though I must say that other European countries used our short staple cotton because their machines were differently oriented. So the traditional view, which has seen the British Industrial Revolution primarily in terms of cotton, is thus correct. Cotton was the first industry to be revolutionized, and it is difficult to see what other could have pushed a host of private entrepreneurs into revolution. So cotton, as Sven Beckert has said in his wonderful book, is the basis of global empire capitalism, and it also drove imperialist conquest. Especially in India, where land is very important, and when the British got Berar, which is the current Vidarbha, it was a wonderful, prosperous area with huge biodiversity in terms of crops, but soon all those crops were converted to cotton. And you can see the wretchedness in Berar. It's continuing with us today, where they're dependent on cotton and they're dying because of it. So the East India Company was besieged by mill owners in Manchester to generate good quality cotton from India. The aim was not to build on the excellent qualities of Indian cotton, faulted for its shortness of staple, which would break in the machines of Manchester. The East India Company also felt that the inferiority of Indian cotton to American cotton was due to the defective way it was cultivated, and this could be remedied by a judicious application of skill and capital. So this is the unfortunate view that even experts like Forbes Royal, who's written this in his another great book, felt about Indian cotton, that it constantly needed improving. So the research to replace short staple cotton by long staple which was more suitable for English and American ginning, began in 1790, and guess where they began it? It began in the Malabar region, where it obviously would fail. So from 1842 to 1906, several American varieties were introduced in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. And it was carried out from the point of view of the traders and the English manufacturers. But it was a huge failure in most parts, except in, I think, Sindh, Doab and in Dharwad. So one of the planters sent to India there were 10 American planters planters who came to India in 1838, they went to various parts of India to teach poor Indian natives how to grow and improve their cotton. So one of the planters, Mr. Mercer, said that the experimental farms were only a useless expense to government, that the American system was not adapted to India, and that the natives of India were, from their knowledge of the climate and capabilities of the soil, able to cultivate better and much more economically than any European. So they had to go through a lot of pain and travel to find this out. So what happened in colonial India was this constant effort to improve cotton, to make it finer. In fact, prizes were given in Bombay Presidency, in Madras Presidency, for farmers who grew good cotton. But there were also people who felt in the British, among the British, especially Sir George Watt, who has compiled the Dictionary of Economic Products of India and who's also has an absolutely invaluable book called The Wild and Cultivated Cottons. He has accepted the fact that it's a short staple cotton that is as superior as the American cotton in some cases. So, and that's what even the CICR, which is the premier research institute for cotton, the Central Institute for Cotton Research, admits that it is the hardy qualities of desi cotton which will now come into focus. And post-independence, guess what? Only 5% of scientists worked on desi cotton. So in 1929, we're cutting to post-independence. You can see the same thing continues. The fact that the Indian scientists, for instance here, Mr. Iyer, they keep releasing better and better varieties of the American type of cotton, and Iyer was of the firm view that the focus should be on American type of cotton for increasing yield and fiber qualities of Indian cotton. So India became the first country to develop hybrid cotton H4, which has an American hirsutum strain for commercial cultivation. H4 was released by the main cotton research station at Gujarat Agricultural University in Surat in 1970, and Dr. C.T. Patel is quite a hero. So, why is it that a crop once grown with abandon is now the chief cause of misery in India? Why are cotton farmers committing suicide? Why are we growing a hybrid cotton in rain-fed areas? These are some of the questions. But on the other hand, one has to accept that because of the Green Revolution, one need not accept it. What I'm trying to say is that because of the Green Revolution in the late 60s onwards, the same concept of hybridization was taken a step further to increase crop production. And if you see the history of cotton growing in the last, say since 1968, our productivity has not improved much compared to world standards. But two things have happened. One is that we've increased our area tremendously, and that is because states like Gujarat have got micro irrigation facilities, unlike Maharashtra, where Vidarbha has barely 6% irrigation. And other countries have scaled back cotton. For instance, China, which has a huge, which is hoarding cotton and which is not growing much cotton. Australia was one of the countries, but I think last year it's increased its area. So India suddenly in the last 2 years has become the largest #1 cotton growing area, which everyone is celebrating. And it's also among the top exporters of cotton. But we also import a lot of superfine cotton despite our history of making wonderful Dhaka muslin. So I just want to show you some pictures of the situation now, and also raise some questions about our future, which we have raised in the book. So the way forward is to come with an understanding of our cotton farming history and biodiversity. And we need to examine questions which relate to why are we growing this cotton and whether growing cotton is sustainable. Because cotton is facing huge competition from man-made fibers, and though 10 million cotton farmers in this country are dependent on it and there's a huge industry around it, some cotton farmers are not making a living out of it, and that we need to find out what is the reason. I just went to Yavatmal last month, who was suffering from pesticide poisoning. A lot of things happened in Vidarbha this year. One is that there was a huge pest attack on cotton, which people didn't know why it was happening since July. And a lot of the farmers and laborers who were spraying these pesticides were dying. At least 50 of them have, 22 in Yavatmal and elsewhere. Over 50 people have died. Over 800 to 1,000 people were in hospital. I met some of the people in hospital who were, they don't use any gloves and masks, but they've always never used any gloves and masks. So why this year? Why was it so toxic that people actually died? So this is the field of Vasant Rathod. He's growing BT cotton. This is his field, which is completely, as you can see, it's no good. He's hardly got any cotton from this field. It is BT cotton. And unprecedented pink bollworm attack. I know this is maybe a little boring to talk of bollworms and cotton types, but this is crucial to our understanding of cotton. Because when BT cotton was introduced in 2002, it was resistant to 3 cotton caterpillars: the tobacco caterpillar, the American bollworm, and the pink bollworm. But Bolgar 1, which is the first seed that Monsanto introduced, Monsanto Mexico, developed resistance sometime in, I think, 2009, and then they released Bolgar 2, which again seems to have developed resistance. Also, BT cotton caters to a few pests on cotton. Cotton has several other pests and secondary pest attacks. You may have read about it, how the whitefly has destroyed cotton in Punjab in the last 2 years. This has been happening. Mealy bugs, which are never seen on cotton. So there is a sea change in what is happening in terms of pests and resistance and the use of pesticides in cotton in the last 10 to 15 years. And this year, I keep reading every day that almost all the cotton in Maharashtra, over 40 lakh hectares of it, is almost gone because of this one pest. This is the kind of seeds that they showed me. It's certified, it's great, but they're having so many problems. This is the field of another farmer, Subhash Bhagat. I'll show you his picture later, which is again infested. It's a beautiful field, 10 hectares with tall cotton. And this year the cotton was very tall because initially there were good rains and no. These are some of the, this is on the left, is Devidas Madavi, the first guy who died of pesticide poisoning, Kalam in Yavatmal, and that's his family, his young daughter and wife. This is another family who died in Kalam, that is, the photograph is the man who died and his daughter and wife. These are some of the people who survived pesticide poisoning. The young man on the left can't see clearly. They're using such toxic chemicals. And the question that must be asked is, if you have a cotton that is supposed to be resistant to pests, these main pests, why are you spraying so much that you're getting blinded, you're dying? So these are the farmers I met who are really mad at how their cotton crop has lost. That's Subhash, whose entire crop has failed. So this is the future of cotton that we see over the years. This is what it has ended up in because of our poor policy, because of our lack of planning and vision, and for completely caving into private players instead of direction. And one very important thing which really you must know is that on Desi cotton, when a monograph was written in 1960, it did not mention the green or the American bollworm. That came later when we went in for the American varieties. Yes, the pink bollworm was very much there. So this entire exercise of BT cotton could have been avoided if we didn't go in for American hirsutum hybrids, probably. But there is a reason it's called the American bollworm. So there are many things about cotton and transgenic cotton which are unfortunately not debated. Every time you raise the issue, it's a pro and anti-BT cotton. There is no grey area, no debate. That is another sad part. So you have stories of success, you have stories of failure. So a debate cannot be conducted in this unhealthy environment. And what we are trying to say in our book is also that cotton has another future. It needn't be that farmers have to commit suicide, that weavers have to commit suicide. There has to be another future, and Uzrima, who's co-author of the book, is heading the Malka Trust, which is actually, it's not an easy thing, it's not as easy as I'm trying to make it. It's one of the alternatives that is before us. To decentralize cotton, to make cotton that is grown available to the grower, close at hand. You don't go through all the expensive and energy-intensive processes of baling, unbaling, and you market it yourself. And another thing that I wanted to say when I showed you the example of the textile from the Egyptian desert was that India was known for its coarse, everyday cottons. We only hear of the Dhaka muslins, but that's not the only thing that we were famous for. We were famous, it was one of the few countries, and if you see the records of the Greeks and other people, Arabs, you know that Indians wore, common Indians, you see market, reports of market, you have coarse hand-woven cloth. And I think Malka tries to emulate that. It's not just the fine cottons that India is known for, it's also known for its wonderful everyday cloth that people can wear, of all communities and classes can wear.